To be a Muslim is to understand that I may not always get what I want when I want it. And even if I get what I want, I may not always get it when I want it. And even when I get what I want when I want it, I may not always get it how I want it. And what this enables me to do is to face anything that a human existence has to offer. And this is the significance of Ramadan, and this is the significance and the value of Islam as a religion. As human beings, we are born in a place, in a time, to parents, to a family over which we have no control. We don't know who is going to be in power, whether they're going to be benevolent or tyrannical. We don't know the economic circumstances in which we're going to be born. We don't know if we're going to have parents who are caring or neglectful. We don't know any of these things. And yet we come into this life, and this is what we have to face. And along the way, we will always be faced with choices. And those choices will pull and tug on our passions. Those choices will pull and tug at our ego. And if our passions and our egos are not refined, we may end up making choices that seem to satisfy our passions or satisfy our egos in the short run, but ultimately we make choices that are not good for us. Not only that, one of the things that undermines the happiness and the tranquility of the lives of many people is that they are not in a position to postpone gratification. They are not in a position to accept the fact that things do not always turn out the way you would like them to turn out. That your children will not always be those perfect little darlings that you would like them to be. That your wife will not always be that perfect darling that you would like her to be. Your husband will not always be that perfect individual that you would like him to be. And if your passions and your ego and yourself are not refined, then what you will end up doing is often overreacting to very natural and common human frailties and human inabilities to actualize the ideals that human beings want to actualize. You know, it's very interesting that sometimes, because we are so addicted to our utopian notions and our grandiose ways of thinking, that we're not even in a position to appreciate what we actually have. Utopian thinking, idealistic thinking, one of the problems with it is that if the ideal is here, utopian thinking will always enable me to raise it to here. And once it gets here, utopian thinking will say, well, that's not good enough, it can be more. And that's not good enough, it can be more. And we always then want to shoot for that which is ideal. And when we don't get it, many times we are frustrated, we are depressed, we are unhappy, and we don't know how to reconstitute our balance so that we can re-engage in life with a sense of purpose and positive attitude. That is one of the prices that we pay for an unrefined self. Indeed, there are many individuals, you know, in his book, Madarij al-Salikin, the great Muslim thinker Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah gave a very interesting definition of ghadab. And by ghadab, he meant not simply anger. The word ghadab means anger in Arabic. But in this particular instance, Ibn Qayyim was getting at something, I think, a bit deeper. What he was actually talking about is what we might call today depression. And many psychologists actually define depression as anger turned against the self. Depression is a form of anger, but is an anger that is turned in against oneself. One is angry at oneself. One is extremely angry at oneself. And in the face of this anger, one ends up paralyzed. Ibn Qayyim, however, says the source of anger is essentially su' al-irada, wanting the wrong things. Wanting the wrong things. Now, understand what we mean by wanting the wrong things. It is natural for me to want fine food. It is natural for me to want the kind of fine food that I like. I have American taste in food. I like the kind of food that Americans like. It is natural for me to have these likes. But what happens when I have the food that I want, and in the face of that, a very poor and needy person shows up? Someone whom I think under those circumstances may have an even greater need for that food than me. I end up having perhaps to share that food. But because myself is so unrefined, I don't want to share that food. I don't want to allow someone else to partake of that. And that wanting the wrong thing or not wanting the right thing can end up plunging me into a state of depression. I'm angry. Some of us, because ourselves are so unrefined, some of us even end up angry at Islam. And some of us, wal ma'adu billah, some of us may even end up angry at God. God, why did you command me to do this? Why did you forbid me from doing that? And the reason that we are so angry is that, again, ourselves are unrefined. Ramadan is a means of refining that self. Ramadan is a means of restoring us to balance. Ramadan is a means of raising that diamond from a raw entity in the rough to a polished jewel that everyone would want to own and possess. As Muslims, we must understand and we must believe with all of our soul that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants what is best for us as human beings. And that when He tells us to do something, He tells us to do something that is ultimately to our benefit. And it may not be to my benefit individually in each and every single circumstance, but it will always be to our benefit collectively. And again, if myself is not refined, I cannot transcend my own individual passions and ego to the point that I'm able to think beyond myself. And so God tells me to do something that is good for the collective, but that might cost me something individually. And because I can't get beyond myself, I cannot make a commitment to the collective.